So he has no weaknesses.
All right, let us now listen in to Mike Brown, new head coach of the Knicks.
Thank everybody for coming. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Dolan, Leon Rose, for this incredible opportunity. I'd also like to acknowledge my fiancée, Ro, for her continued support and for being here. I look forward to working with Leon, forming a great partnership with our shared common goal of winning a championship. I'm honored and excited to be the new head coach of the New York Knicks. You talk about a historic franchise, Madison Square Garden. It's iconic. Our fans, they're the most knowledgeable and passionate, probably in all of sports. There's a lot of work to be done. We have an outstanding roster. What they did in the playoffs shows their potential. I've had great conversations with all of our players, and I'm looking forward to growing positive, strong relationships with all of them over time. Our goal, starting with Mr. Dolan, to Leon, to the players, all the way down to the fans, is to build a sustainable winning culture that produces championships. That's why I'm here. I'm fortunate to know what it takes to create that success. A lot of hard work, a high level of commitment, and a focus on today. Now, a lot of you guys are going to say, this sounds cliche, and it is, but we can't skip any steps. It's about one day, one practice, one shoot around at a time. The soul of our identity when it comes to culture is going to be based on a trust that's centered around sacrifice, a connectivity, a competitive spirit, and an overall belief in the process and each other. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all. But there's a lot of work to do, and I'm ready to get started.
Okay, now we're going to open up to the questions.
Coach, just your style of play that we want to play, and just what's it like having Jalen Brunson kind of running your team?
The first thing is, everybody knows I like to play fast. And like I said, we have an outstanding roster. I'm excited about that. And to have a guy like Jalen out there gives you the versatility to play all different types of ways, which is what it's going to take throughout a course of a ball game.
Mike, Steve Popper from Brunson. I know you had expectations in other jobs you've taken, stepping in behind Fana and stuff. Just kind of what is it for you coming into a team that's reached the conference finals, the expectations you're stepping into?
Well, there's nobody has any bigger expectations, first of all, than I do. My expectations are high. But this is the Knicks. I talked about Madison Square Garden being iconic. I talked about our fans. I love and embrace the expectations that come along with it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Coach, when obviously a team makes the conference final,
they fired the last guy, and what is the new guy bringing in to elevate it above what the previous guy did. So in what ways do you plan to kind of just elevate this team in ways that Tom Thibodeau did?
Well, first of all, Tom is a tremendous coach, and he is a friend of mine. But I don't want to get into the past. I'm just excited about the roster. I'm excited about the things that we're going to put in place here and where we can go with the guys that we have. Thank you.
In terms of championship caliber, good basketball, how do you define that? What is your vision of good basketball, particularly with the pieces you have on both sides of the floor?
Well, it's a twofold question. What I've experienced, and I said it in my opening statement, I've been to 6 finals with 3 different teams, and the commonality that they all had is they all sacrifice for one another. They're all connected. The connectivity, it's at the highest, and it starts with ownership on down. They all have a competitive spirit, and there's a high level of belief, not just in the process, but each other. So those 4 things are common amongst all the teams that I've been with that have participated in the finals.
Mike, James Edwards, Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
Obviously, when you're going into a job search, you want to sell yourself to the team. When you go into those, what do you want to hear from the team in terms of what they want to do to help enhance you and set you up for success too?
The first thing, the only person I really had to sell myself to was Roe, and obviously it worked. That's why she's sitting right there. But I respect Leon's process. I feel like I'm a detailed guy. I feel like I'm thorough with anything and everything that I try to do. So it's no different here. I was just myself throughout the process. Had great conversations with Mr. Dolan, obviously with Leon and his group, because my whole thing is I want to form a partnership with him to do this together. It's impossible to do on your own, and obviously the outcome is exciting for me because I'm sitting in the seat that I wanted to be in.
Mike, how are you? Chris Herring from ESPN. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
One of the things that stands out a lot from the job you did in Sacramento and just generally is I think you're seen as a coach who holds his guys accountable. And I think obviously you coached under Pop. And what does that look like for you with star players and your willingness to kind of hold them to account? What does that look like given that so many of the players had tight relationships with the last coach and a group of them played in the same program in college? Like, what does that look like to you to ask for accountability? What does it look like to this group of this?
Well, in general, I think that is a part of my job. It's one of my values is accountability, but not just for the players and even for myself. I expect people to hold me accountable. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships. It's about the trust that I talked about. And once you grow those relationships, then you're going to talk openly about anything that you need to in the direction that you need to go. And so I'm going to be open and honest with them, and I'm sure they're going to be open and honest with me. And like I said, I'm no different.
Hey, Mike, Ian Bagley, SNY. Nice to meet you.
A pleasure.
I know you said there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of that is looking at this team and what they can do and what you may or may not change. I'm just wondering, the starting 5, particularly late in the year, they had a tough time defensively. Do you see areas where they can improve on defense or things that let me do this, maybe we can get some more stuff? Do you see that at all with this group?
Well, again, I thought, what the group did this past year in the playoffs, it just shows their potential, and not just defensively but offensively too. And so I'm looking forward to putting a plan in place and working with those guys on both ends of the floor. I love their length. I love their versatility. And so implementing something or my vision is very exciting for me, and hopefully it is for everybody else, because I think the ceiling is high on both ends for the group. Good to see you.
I was curious, the beginning couple months of the year, the Knicks were right there near at the top in possession. Kind of after January 1st or so, they were around middle of the pack in offensive rating. What did you see from watching them in the second half versus the first half of the year of kind of stuff that you can clean up a little bit, and more schematically, how do you feel like the offense can hit that level where it was when it was on its best this last year?
Like I said, I thought Tom Thibodeau did a great job, and the guys did a fantastic job last year. But I'm looking forward. We got, we just added 2 new additions to the team that are going to bring a lot of versatility to how we're going to play. I just can't wait to get on the court and start implementing things that we want to do offensively to help us grow and take it to another level. But we still got some time before we do that.
Bryan,
How you doing? Good to see you.
It seemed like over the course of this year, there were quite a few coaching changes, really starting with you, went on to Memphis and Denver, and finally here, that surprised people. The team had done very well. The guy had a great run there, took them to places they hadn't gone in a long time. Is it getting harder as a coach to sort of understand what the organization wants, or why do you want to keep doing this, jump right back in and keep going as a coach?
I mean, I'm passionate about coaching. I want to win. And, you want to be in a great place that has like thinking. And so I know for me, especially speaking with Mr. Dolan, speaking with Leon, and I have a history with Leon, knowing who he is as a person, knowing that I'd love to partner with him, and then looking at the roster. And the reality of it is, Rose said, we better move to New York because I'm a foodie. So when you combine all those things, it was a no-brainer for me. The league is the league, and there's always going to be ebbs and flows in terms of how the hiring and firing process goes, and you just embrace it and you keep moving forward.
Congratulations on the new goal. In Sacramento, your first year, ending the playoff drought, what do you bring from that experience here in your first year?
I learned a lot, not just in Sacramento, but throughout my entire career. I'm a firm believer that if you don't evolve, no matter what profession you're in, I'm sure you guys feel it too, especially some of you guys that have been around for a long time. Okay, I'm not going to say any names. I'm just pointing out that way. I'm not saying any names, but for some of you guys that's been around a long time, and you feel the young bucks. I'm not pointing it or saying it. You feel the young bucks clawing at the back of your heels, and so learning, growing, evolving throughout the course of your time of where you're at is something that I'm a firm believer in, and I can't just pinpoint one thing, but I know I appreciate my time in Sacramento. I appreciate the fans there, and I appreciate the opportunity that Vivek gave me to run his team.
I want to kind of piggybacking on that.
Okay.
Yeah, evolving. I mean, basketball has obviously evolved from when you first started as a coach to now. Just how are your views on basketball changed, considering how the game has evolved, and considering your experience on the bench in Golden State, you guys won a bunch of titles. Just how is their view on basketball changing with the game?
It's changed in a lot of different ways. I mean, I can go far back. My first bench job was with the Washington Bullets. They were still called the Bullets back then, and we were playing at the Cap Center still in Landover, Maryland, and we had Chris Webber and Juwan Howard and Tracy Murray and all those guys, Tim Legler, and you learn a lot from not just your experience as a coach with the other coaches there, but also from the players. When I was in San Antonio with David and Tim, it was about playing inside out. And now, fast forward to my time with Steve, it's about pace and space. And that's where the game is. And like I said, if you can't evolve, you're going to get left behind. And so I feel like I'm trying to do that, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that here.
Mike, Raj Rubin from Newsday.
Pleasure.
A question about the Eastern Conference landscape. Some of the high-achieving teams have suffered crippling injuries that could affect them in the coming season. How do you see the Knicks as they stack up in the conference landscape?
Well, first of all, you know, you don't ever want to see anybody get hurt, you know, especially like the way those guys did. That's unfortunate. You know, throw basketball out the window. That's just unfortunate for them as individuals, and on top of that, for their families and organizations and all that other stuff. But you know, there are a lot of good teams out there. It doesn't matter if those guys are injured or not. At the end of the day, teams are going to find ways to win, and so we don't feel like it's going to be any easier just because of the injuries going forward. We're going to have to focus on this thing one day at a time, one practice at a time, one shoot around at a time, and try to get better each and every day. So when it comes time to make our run in the playoffs, we're ready.
Stephan Bondi with New York Post.
Good.
You know, you obviously took Sacramento in a short amount of time to places that hadn't been in a very long time.
Yeah.
So from this coach, it was very unclear why they fired you. And did you ever get a clear idea of what happened there?
You know, I don't even want to get into it because that's behind me. I'm excited about being here in New York, and like I said earlier, taking her to a couple of restaurants because it probably won't happen come September, October, at least for the next 6 months. But I'm again thankful for the opportunity out in Sacramento.
So I just got one
Yeah.
coaching guys like LeBron, coaching guys like Steph, Kevin Durant, Tim Duncan. What does that experience help you with from job to job?
You know, it's part of my evolution. I learned a lot from all those guys, from Tim Duncan to LeBron to Steph to KD to Draymond to Foxy. I mean, you go down the line because they're all different. That's what makes my experience, my background, in my opinion, helped me be different or unique, just being around those guys. Even a guy like Andre Iguodala, who I love to death, you know, just all those guys helped me grow in some way, shape, or form. And they all, whether they want to admit it or not or whatever, they all have a little bit to do with why I'm standing right here.
Mike Carroll from New York Post. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm curious how closely you followed watching these guys last year. Obviously, in the moment, you didn't realize you'd be standing there.
Right.
You were just watching it. Assuming you were watching it as a guy who likes basketball and knows basketball and is interested in it. What were your impressions then? Not realizing you were even coaching, but just watching him as a basketball person.
Well, again, watching them as a fan, which I did not just here, but with every team in the league. You know, you're excited. I said that they have we have an outstanding roster. You know, what they did in the playoffs shows their potential, and you know, I'm looking forward to getting to work with these guys.
All right, we'll do a couple more, James. Mike, what are the first few days of getting a new job like? How soon are you talking to players? How soon are you trying to finalize your staff? Can you just take us through that process of the moment you knew you would come here to today, I guess?
Yeah, you know, it's a lot of that. You want to reach out to all your players. You want to start that line of communication going, because at the end of the day, again, I go back to, this is what you guys do. It's about relationships, and those relationships are some of the most important relationships that I'm going to have going forward. And so touching base with them, getting that process going. And then, I want to be collaborative. I want to form that partnership with Leon. Again, I'm excited to do that with him. And so he and I, we just started, sitting down and talking about different ways to formulate a staff. So that's going to be a process that's ongoing, and who knows how long it will take. But those are a couple of things that you really start to dive into, as well as trying to figure out the landscape and all that other stuff when you get a job.
Hey, Mike, just your thoughts, based on what you saw of Carl Towns and Mitchell Robinson, the idea of those two guys sharing the floor together.
Once I get my staff together and we dive more into it, we'll figure out, all those types of things. I'm excited that they're both on the team, obviously, because they're two different players. Mitchell's a vertical threat. Cat, as you know, is a space threat. And so to have the versatility that those two guys bring to the table is going to be a lot of fun.
In all your stops, is there a Mike Brown way to play, or do you adapt to roster and opportunity each time you go to?
And no, that's a great question. I think you have a philosophy on both ends of the floor, but you have to make sure that it fits with your personnel. So it's ever evolving, and it will be here once our roster is final, our staff is final. We'll lay the groundwork or the foundation for what we're going to do going forward as a unit.
Thank you, everybody.
What's good, everybody? We just heard from Mike Brown, his introductory press conference. You're watching a live edition of New York Got Game. I'm Dexter Henry. Some very interesting things that we heard from Mike Brown. We are going to discuss and react to it in his first press conference as Knicks head coach. Mike Brown named the 32nd head coach in Knicks history. Joining me on this live stream is my guy. He does a lot of these lives with me. It is Bryan Fonseca, who will join us now. B, what's going on, man?
That was interesting, actually. That was real interesting. What we just saw and heard.
Yeah, sometimes I think, depending on the franchise, the situation, press conferences can be, whatever. I'm not saying that Mike Brown said a whole bunch of things that were super exciting. I was intrigued I don't know I'm going to get into what you were looking for in this press conference before we get into what he actually said.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think I was looking at his temperament, how he handled the media. I mean, introductory press conferences are usually not tough. Not like a lot of people are going to be grilling you here in the media. That's just not going to be the vibe. But I thought if you were shaky on Mike Brown, right, in terms of a hire, I thought you could see by the way he answered questions, his approach, I thought you could see, okay, this is why this is right for this team. This is why somebody can feel confident leading this team where they're at with all the pressure that's on them. Right, we talked about the finals or bust. We talked about that, and Stephan Bondi, our beat reporter, will be joining us to talk about this well too. But Bryan, what were your expectations for this press conference? What were you looking for to hear, see from Mike Brown in this?
I mean, introductory press conferences, we've covered a bunch of these. They're usually boring. I did find some interesting things in this, though. He kept talking about versatility. He kept talking about offense. He kept talking about the talent on this roster. He kept talking up the ways that he can potentially use them without giving up too much detail, because he would defer to his staff and be like, hey, we need to actually figure out the coaching staff or whatever. Like, he needs to finalize all his guys there, so to speak. But the offense was a big part of this.
Yep.
And he sounds like he wants to play with pace, which you and I talked about the possibility of that last week. And he's been hired. We'll see if that's the case. I will mention that as far as pace goes, the Knicks were, with Tom Thibodeau, 30th, 29th, 25th, 30th, and 26th in the NBA. with Mike Brown, the Kings were at the top of the league in that 1 year specifically, where they were the best offense, in the league a few years back before that went south. That's what's going to be an emphasis there. And I think in order to do that, there seems to be an understanding that he'll have to open up the rotation, which is why I think you go away from Tibbs to begin with. So I think if you're a Knicks fan, that's probably music to your ears. Now, it's just words at the end of the day, so I wouldn't go too crazy about it. But I find it interesting that this was the emphasis. And I feel like he kind of knew he had to come in and win the press conference, so to speak, like tell Knicks fans, tell people, like, this is what the vision is for the time being. And, we'll see what actually ends up happening as time progresses, if we get to the actual season, which is going to start in 3+ months.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Right now, we do have our Knicks beat reporter for the New York Post, the great Stephan Bondi, who was just there at the press conference, asked a couple of questions there in Carytown. Steph, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up? What's going on?
How you doing, man? First of all, let's just get quickly. What were your thoughts on the press conference? How did you feel Mike Brown presented to the media and the questions he answered and everything? How do you think he did?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a very polished person. He was, pretty much what we expected. He's a veteran coach. He's a veteran in front of a microphone. And, he said he didn't reveal much, but, he said what he needed to say, basically.
Yeah, he did. He did say what he needed to say. I don't think there was anything like too earth-shattering. What did you make of? Because he was asked a question. I can't remember who asked the question. He was asked a question about his style of play. And he talked a lot about evolution in this press conference, Steph. And we went through this the last time we talked to you about his journeys and his stops. Do you expect the Knicks to be a more balanced team under Mike Brown? Or do you think that's something we can see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal. I think that when you're selling Mike Brown, you're selling the idea that he came in as a defensive-minded guy, and he kind of, in his last stop, I think he learned a lot. First of all, when he was an assistant in Golden State. He learned about collaboration. He learned about offensively how to create a dynamic offense, and then he applied that to Sacramento. So I think when you're selling Mike Brown, you're selling that evolution, and he talked about that a lot. That's part of his resume.
That's a huge part of his resume.
Bonnie, do you think that was part of the plan for Mike Brown today? Because it felt like an emphasis. It felt like he wanted to go in and really talk up evolving the offense, so to speak, and pushing pace and things of that nature. It sounds like this was what he wanted to be the message today more than anything else.
Yeah. When he brought up the word evolution, I believe I'm going to have to listen back again. I believe that was unprompted the first time, and then he was asked about it. And offensively, you're right. I think I can't remember what the question was, but he brought up the pace stuff himself. So when somebody comes in with the idea of, hey, this is what I want to talk about, and they discuss that with a question, then that's certainly something that they wanted to emphasize. I think that was part of his agenda today.
For people who may overreact to this, so to speak, one way or the other, what could you say to them in terms of how much should people actually take away from this, given that it's an introductory press conference and it could be a word salad or it could be things that matter? How much would you take away from this?
I don't think I'd take away much. I'm trying to think back on something that he said where I'm like, wow, that was a real revelation, and I can't come up with something right now. So I think overreacting to anything he said would be a mistake, but it was kind of what we expected. I think he didn't want to talk about Thibodeau and following up on Thibodeau. He didn't want to talk about. I asked him a question like, what happened in Sacramento? Why did they decide to move on from me? He didn't want to talk about that. So, sure, he had his top talking points, and that's how press conferences go a lot of the time. It wasn't like he came in and was banging the podium and saying, I'm going to win a championship. That wasn't on the agenda, and he had a perfectly professional press conference.
It was perfectly professional. I don't know. I'm curious as to your takeaway, Steph. Do you get the sense that he understands the pressure that is here and what we talked about? We talked about finals or bust last week when you were on with us. Do you get the sense that he understands what he's facing here?
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about this before, but he's somebody who understands pressure about as well as anybody, because when you're coaching LeBron James, when he's threatening to leave the city of Cleveland, that was about as pressure-packed as you can have in terms of a situation as a head coach. So he's used to it. He's been around winning organizations. He's won championships as an assistant coach. He understands what pressure is. So he's not. That's part of the reason why they tried to. They wanted to hire an experienced coach, somebody who's used to this. So I think he understands. And I think, that was a big reason why they hired him.
Yeah, that feels like a huge part of why that went down with him. And he has been in a lot of pressure situations, as you've mentioned here. Bondi, what can you also tell us about the staff? You had an article that came out today that people should check out about the rest of the coaching staff and filling it out. And that Rick Brunson will have a role on this coaching staff, not as high as associate head coach, as some people might have thought. But what can you tell us about Brown filling out the rest of the staff?
Yeah, so in my article, I detailed how Rick was the lead assistant last season. He will not be the lead assistant anymore. And, as I wrote in the story, he was on board with that decision. There were a lot of distractions throughout the season that related to him. And it was kind of viewed, organizationally, like it's just best to kind of push those aside and take a step back and let Mike Brown hire his associate head coach or lead assistant. To be clear, I don't know if the lead assistant will get the associate head coach title, but I believe he will. And they will be bringing back a few assistants from last season. From what I heard or expected to, it's Darren Erman, Mo Cheeks, and Bryan, the big man coach. So, Mike Brown talked today about filling out his staff and getting these guys in. So he'll be making some hires as well. And, then it's off to Summer League.
Is James Borrego in play at all for associate head coach?
Yeah.
Bryan, we're on the same page.
I believe that he is in play, but there's some skepticism that New Orleans will let him out of his contract because he is an associate head coach in New Orleans. So it would be a lateral move, and a lot of times the permission doesn't get granted in those situations.
Understood.
Should people read into the Rick Brunson piece and him being demoted, I guess, to use the term?
Read into it how?
Like, does it ultimately matter that he's a holdover? Because some people are like, oh, is Jalen going to be happy about him being demoted? Is there going to be, him being a holdover? Is that going to be something that causes friction because he doesn't have as high of a position as last year? I don't think so, but is that something that we might be hearing about later in the year, so to speak?
I don't think so. I think, like I said, Rick was, from what I heard, Rick was on board with this. So, I think he became the lead assistant last year after Johnny Bryan left, and he wasn't the lead assistant the 2 seasons prior. So he's kind of taking demotion back to what he was before. So, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. He's already kind of served in that role as an assistant in years prior where it was fine with Jalen. So I don't see it being an issue.
Is there a timeline that Mike Brown or the Knicks want their coaching staff to be finalized by?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see how that plays out. A couple more things before we let you go, Steph, because we know Summer League is up next for you. We did learn, and you were the one on this past weekend, that Gershon Yabusele took a little bit less than the full TMLE here. So the Knicks do have an opportunity where they could sign another veteran player. Do you expect the Knicks to do that this rest of this offseason? How do you see things shaking out? Do you expect them to sign another veteran player?
Yeah, I do expect them to sign another veteran player, and I expect it to be a ball handler.
Okay, expect it to be a ball handler. Interesting. Would any names that you could be comfortable sharing? Could Malcolm Brogdon, one of those guys, in the mix for that? Are we talking Malcolm, Ben Simmons? Does he count too?
I could. I'm thinking about what I can say.
Sorry, Steph. Your reaction was similar when somebody asked me that the other day.
All right, so to be honest, I'm not going to rule out Ben Simmons, and I think Malcolm Brogdon is somebody to put on the list.
Okay.
Would you rule out Russell Westbrook?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. From the first day of free agency,
once you get to Ben Simmons, you're like a half step away from Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I know. It's true that they lobbied interest in Ben Simmons. I don't know how high the level of interest is, but it's true that they talked to his representation.
Well, you know what? On that note, Steph, if they do add Ben Simmons, that is a third non-shooter on the roster. Does that fit into the way Mike Brown would want to play, or are they looking at him as sort of a defensive specialist, come and grab some boards, also add a little bit of playmaking? I'm wondering if that fits into how he wants to play. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't know how. My guess, this is just a guess. My guess is that Mike Brown would not want Ben Simmons on his team. That's just a total guess. To me, like there's the shooting element that you mentioned, the fact that he's kind of scared to play offense, and there's the idea that he also decided that he was going to sit out the whole season and not play basketball. So. Listen, I don't know what's going on in Mike Brown's head. I can't tell you that he likes or dislikes Ben Simmons, but that would be my guess.
He's also elite at driving the ball past half court and then passing it to somebody else once he gets to the 3-point line.
Yeah, and
if you want to increase the pace, from up into the 3-point line, Ben Simmons is your guy.
Yeah, and he also, I've watched enough Nets games where he would drive to the paint and then just turn around and not even look at the basket because he wanted no part of that. But listen, he's obviously is a top-notch defender. He's obviously has top-level size and athleticism and speed, and in transition, he's a guy you want. And as Jared Dudley once said, this is when Ben Simmons was at his peak, which was hilarious. He's an all-star in transition, but in the half court, he's just average. And I would say he's less than average in the half court.
Yo, that is quite accurate. I can't even deny that. One of the last thing for me, Bondi. A lot of things that Mike Brown talked about. I know we had the buzzword that we had from him a couple of times through this about evolution, but he talked about the process. He talked about communication, other buzzwords we kind of hear a lot from coaches. How much do you think he is going to be able to communicate his message through his own evolution through this team, and how soon does it start? He said he's already started reaching out to players, but how do you think he's going to be effective in his communication style with this team that maybe might differ from Tom Thibodeau?
Yeah, I think that's a strength of his. I think, in a lot of ways, he's Tibbsian in the, like, he's hard on guys. He's willing to hold guys accountable. I think he does that even more so than Tibbs. But, I think that he understands the importance of communication and relationships. And he did talk a lot about working with the front office today. I thought that was another point of emphasis. So I think there'll be a kind of collaboration on that part. So I think that's something else to take away from this press conference.
Gotcha. Steph, before we let you go, what are you looking forward to in Summer League? A couple of young players playing there. What are you looking forward to when you head out to Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of young guys that were second-round picks last year, and they had the second-round pick this year, and the guy that they acquired for Karl Anthony Towns, James Najee, is that how you pronounce his name?
Correct. Yeah, Najee.
Yep. So I've never seen him play. I'm interested in seeing him play. I'm interested in seeing the development of Pacome Dadier, the development of Ariel Hukporti, who hasn't played really since undergoing the surgery for the torn meniscus. So I'm interested to see where he's at. Kevin McCullough, he's a guy that we didn't get to see much of because of that knee issue. He's a guy that I'm looking forward to. Tyler Kolek. So they got a lot of intriguing guys. I don't think many of them will be actually in the rotation next season, but there is the opportunity for at least one or two of them to crack the regular rotation in the NBA.
Yeah, that's something Knicks fans have wanted to see. Steph, we appreciate the time. Sadly, I will not be with you out in Vegas this year, but stay cool. We'll talk soon. We'll talk from Vegas soon. Thank you, my friend.
All right, man.
Later. That's Stephan Bondi, beat reporter for the New York Post, covering the Knicks. He was up there in Tarrytown with us live following the introductory press conference for Mike Brown.
By the way,
yes,
Najee, that was an interesting little addition there. I saw him at Barcelona a little bit. He didn't play that much, but maybe he could compete for a spot. I think he was drafted in the second round. Yeah,
second round.
First pick in the second round a couple years ago. So he's got some talent. He's just raw, but he's a big body. We'll see.
Yeah. You also have Dink Pate, who's on the roster. That's really interesting. I'm intrigued. I like Bondi. I mean, I think Bondi knows even better than me. There are two guys. I think two of the three rookies that were drafted last year have a chance to play some rotational minutes. I think Dadier has probably the best chance, and then I might go. You can split. Yeah, it could. Well, if they're getting another ball handler, it might not be Kolek.
No. I think Hukporti is the one to me. Yeah, because Mitch is not going to play 82 games.
Probably not. But I think Dadier, I know they're high on him. I'm very intrigued to see. He showed you some good defensive flashes at times. Can he be the 3-and-D guy that they want to see? That's really interesting. And then Hukporti, you're right. I think because of the position he's at, he might have the best chance for minutes. I think you're right about that, Bryan. Now I think about it, I'm like, that makes a whole lot of sense. I think you are right about that. If you have any questions in the chat, we see a lot of you on YouTube, people watching on Twitter, as well as Facebook. A lot of people locked in for this stream. We appreciate you rocking with us. We're going to talk a little bit more Mike Brown. We'll take some of your comments, your questions. We'll bring it in. Is Mike Brown it? I saw somebody say Mike Brown ain't it, which I'm intrigued to be like, who was it and who else was there out there that you like? Just let's like to know. There we go. Daniel Hallett says Mike Brown ain't it, bro. All right, Daniel, who was it?
He's not alone. I saw some other people.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to shame you, Daniel. I'm just curious as to who you thought was it. That's all. For the people who say that he isn't it, who'd you like? Let us know. We appreciate all your comments in the chat. Nostalgic Nick, who always reps with us.
Yes,
Shout out to you. You do it. It's funny. The NYC B-Ball 08 comes in and says, who would have been your preferred coaching candidate? Yeah, that's all I want to know. If you're going to say someone's not it, you got to give me who you think was better or who was your preferred coaching candidate. That's all we want. New York State of Mind has a question. He says, anything about Precious Achiuwa? Precious Achiuwa is not coming back.
Yeah.
That's not, he's not coming back.
I think the runway needs to be there for Yabusele and Hawk Purdy to be the backups. More so Yabusele, obviously, but let's also mention though, Hawk Purdy, kind of like Jericho Sims last year, on the last year of a short-term contract, but young, you think he has upside. And Mitchell Robinson has a short-term deal also. So, like, if you're looking at Hawk Purdy basically playing for like a Deuce McBride type of contract, you want to see him get minutes and see if he can solidify a backup center job, which will make Mitchell Robinson expendable, or you could keep all of them and just sort of figure out how to work them. But I think the Knicks are going to have somewhat of an investment in Hawk Purdy getting some minutes this year.
I think so too. I think they want to see how he develops. Daniel did respond to us. Daniel said Taylor Jenkins was who he went to, who, I believe was the other finalist for this job, and the Knicks were impressed with him. They went with Mike Brown instead. I mean,
surprised he doesn't have a job, admittedly.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me you want Taylor Jenkins over Mike Brown, that's not crazy. I mean, it's fine. I think it was fine. How's everybody feeling in the chat about Mike Brown and this hire? Daniel let it be known how he is felt. Look, I think this is fine. Shout out to my guy Ron, still Knicks fans, friend of the program, multiple time guest. Mike Brown is going to be fine as the next coach. I hope the players buy into his free flow style of offense. I think, Ron, to that point, and Bryan and I talked about this last week, I think that's the thing I'm most intrigued about. And I think Steph said the same thing too when he was on with us last week. That's the thing I think a lot of us are intrigued about, fans, media, is how does Mike Brown's offense, how does he maximize this roster offensively? Because the Knicks looked good. They were top 3 offense for most of the year. They were top 5 till January, and then the offense kind of cratered. They were never really the same after that. Now, there's a lot of things you can get into that. Was it minutes? Was it not going 9 or 10 deep? Was that part of it? There's a lot of the reasons you get into that. Was it just the way I look at it? A lot of it is, let's be real, Tom Thibodeau's offense was not dynamic. Okay, it looked a little archaic at times, and I do think Mike Brown, based on his, I'm gonna use the word he said a lot today, Bryan, evolution, right? Based on his evolution, his coaching time under Steve Kerr, I think he grew offensively, and I think that combined with him being known as a defensive coach is the really interesting thing here, and how he can maximize this offense. And I do expect it to be better. I do think things will look better with Jalen Brunson playing more off ball. I think that's something I know you would like to see too, Bryan.
In theory, yes.
In theory.
But that's the thing. Like, people, like, all of these dudes have played in offenses in the past where the ball kind of sticks, to whomever. Like, even going back to OG's Toronto days, like, there were times where Kawhi Leonard would hold the ball a lot. Siakam would have to get cooking also while he's a beast in transition. There were times where he would isolate. Kyle Lowry would move the ball, but like OG Anunoby was like a 4th, 5th option. Mikal Bridges wasn't somebody who like was playing in like always playing in a free flowing offense either. Chris Paul would have the ball a lot and things of that nature. So like it's in theory, yes. I want to see how it actually looks. There's a world where it looks great, but Jalen Brunson's used to making things happen with the ball in his hands. So it's just a matter of like, it might be uncomfortable and it might be an offensive start where the Knicks are like the first month or two, like, oh, what is this? Like, this isn't working. And then they hit it into gear later on in the year. I mean, some of that was happening last year either.
Yeah,
last year
fair.
Also, what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they started off and it was like, what's happening? Then they had that month where they just beat on bad teams. And that was the narrative against them all season. And then we were in the Eastern Conference Finals before we knew it. So,
yeah. No, I can see that. I can see it being a process. Thank you for the question, Ron. Appreciate it. Shout out to Ron with still Knicks fans. Does a great job there. Let's see who else we having here with some stuff. Just looking through some questions here. Namarsh Sakan. I hope I had said your name right. Do you think Mike Brown hires Darvin Ham And do you think they bring Dante DiVincenzo back?
You got to yell Dante DiVincenzo. You got to say.
Do you think they bring
caps.
Dante DiVincenzo? Yeah, it's all caps. I got to get mad. Would they bring Micah Nori's assistant coach? A lot of questions there. I think Darvin Ham is an interesting possibility. I would not rule that out. Dante DiVincenzo, I do not think is. Look, Knicks fans,
give it up.
I know you love Dante.
Give it up.
And here's the thing, Dante. I understand where Knicks fans are with this. So this is not me clowning or saying anything like this. What I'm saying is Dante DiVincenzo had something that was really good for this team 2 seasons ago, and that is he could get up a lot of threes. He hunted threes, something the Knicks lacked last year. Somebody who could take a high volume and also make them. They lack that, and you're hoping they get some more of that this year with Jordan Clarkson, with Gershon Yabusele coming off the bench. That should help them in a bit, but I don't think Dante's coming back. I know everybody wants the Nova 4 back together. It's a heartwarming story. It's not happening, guys. Now, Micah Nori is an assistant from the Timberwolves who also got looks for this job. I don't think so for the reason Steph mentioned with James Borrego. I think it's actually more likely James Borrego gets bought out, but I don't see it because, like Steph said, a lot of that stuff is a lateral move. Maybe if you're going to give some compensation, people don't really give up compensation for lead assistants or associate head coaches.
Yeah.
That generally doesn't happen. So I think it's a long shot on that. Darvin Ham, I think maybe a little bit more likely. Would I like James Borrego on the staff? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, maybe if James Borrego badly wants to leave New Orleans to come to New York, maybe. But it's probably gonna take some compensation.
And Nori was in play for the head coaching job. So
yeah.
How open is he going to be to being a lead assistant off of that? He has a valuable position in Minnesota, where we've seen him actually be important on that staff. Actually, I wanted to ask you that before we get to the next question.
Yeah.
How do you? I don't want to over index on this, but how much do you care about what the final coaching staff looks like? Because I feel like it's something that people get fixated on when things don't go well.
Yeah.
Kind of ignore it when it is going well. You know what I mean? Are we a little hyper? Not on the lead assistant job specifically, because that's important. I think Borrego actually would be that's an interesting forward-thinking sort of hire. But beyond that, how much value are you putting in the entire staff from top to bottom?
Look, I think what I'll say to that is I think when you hire your head coach and you believe in that guy, you got to trust he's going to get the right people around him and allow him to get some of those right people around him. Now, I think some of the guys the Knicks are keeping, before I answer your question, I think Mark Bryant, who did really good work with Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, when I was at games, I've heard this from what he did with him in practices. When I was at games, 30 or so games I went to last year, Mark Bryant was always working with him before, especially in the post, something I know fans would like to see a little bit more from Cat. Mark Bryan is a good big man coach. I think Mo Cheeks is a former head coach, adds value down the bench. I think that matters too. I think who Brown picks to be his lead assistant is going to be very interesting. It's probably going to be somebody who either is very reflective of him, or sometimes people like the lead assistants that are the opposite, right, Brian?
Yeah.
That can, maybe they have a strength that you're not in. So if you're a big offensive coach, although I think Mike Brown is a very good balance coach, based on his career, maybe he wants somebody who's going to orchestrate the defense or add a little bit more wrinkles to the offense.
Right, because he's the one emphasizing
defense first.
No. He's emphasizing the versatility, the talent, and the pace of how they can play offense different from what they were used to. Not shading Tom Thibodeau, but him wanting to implement his, not style, I would say philosophy, because I think the style, at least according to what he said, he wants to sort of let the players play to their strengths, so to speak. He wants to incorporate more of a philosophy than a style, and let the style be, because the Kings, the way he coached them was really trying to get the most out of the talent that they had. It wasn't a style that he had prior. That wasn't how he coached in Cleveland, for example. Cleveland, everything revolved around LeBron James, as it should have been, and his focus was defense, defense, defense. He was an assistant on the Warriors for a while. He goes to Sacramento, and he's a little more laid back, as Zach Lowe mentioned, and also the offense was very free-flowing because you have De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, two of the better offensive players in the league, and you're able to make just magic with that. With shooters in the corners, we talked about how they were able to get out and transition and really push the pace. De'Aaron Fox is one of the fastest guards in the league from coast to coast. This is a different style team. So I do wonder how are they going to sort of strike that balance. And I do wonder if the lead assistant is going to be somebody who's like, okay, here's how Jalen Brunson can get off the ball. Here's how you can use Karl Anthony Towns in a myriad of different ways. Here's how you can get the most out of an OG Anunoby who probably wants to do more offensively. Here's how you could get Mikal Bridges to go back to attacking the basket like he was in Brooklyn. Like, I wonder if that's going to be the case, Dex, with the offense.
Yeah, I wonder about it too. As you were saying all this, and the question you asked, which I think is a good one, it made me think like sometimes as a lead assistant, like the backup quarterback in football. You know what I'm saying? So if something goes wrong, somebody's like, "Yo, we got this guy right here on the bench that we like. We might want to bring him forward, right?" And here's the thing: we acknowledge this, and we talked about this last week. This is a pressure situation for Mike Brown. I don't think this can be understated, and I'm very excited for this next season upcoming in the fall. Not that we need to rush there, but I'm excited to see how all the fans who are here, we appreciate you, are going to react, especially when we start doing our live weekly shows again that Bryan and I do every week on the Knicks. It's going to be interesting to see the fans go through the wave of the season. And are they jumping off the Mike Brown bandwagon or calling for whomever will be the lead assistant coach when they have their first 2-3 game losing streak? And it's like, oh man, we want James Borrego. I told you. Sometimes I think with that, I think it matters, to answer your question. It matters. But I think it's just like anything else, any staff, any other place you work with, you got to be in lockstep with who you're working with, right? You're only as good as the people that support you and do this. We're not as good as our producers and people who help us and make it do what we have to do. So I think it's just finding the right marriage, and you have to trust the process of Mike Brown for it for him to do that. And I think he's been around the block a couple of times that he'll get the right fit for somebody that needs to work next to him. You know what I mean? I'm not worried about it. Whoever he chooses. I mean, like, if you're put it like this, let's say he chooses Coach X. I'm not going to say a name. And you wanted Coach Y. I mean, really? You really gonna like complain about that? Like, that's really gonna like
people will
affect. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna affect.
It'll be after the first loss. My 2 cents says.
Shout out to my 2 cents.
Not even a streak.
who I always see my 2 cents on a lot when I'm on with CP and the guys on Knicks Fan TV. Shout out to my 2 cents. He said me after the first loss. Yo, I have to say, I think you're right.
Especially if it's like a home loss to like Atlanta, if people are gonna be like, oh and my god, Trae Young again. Oh, Porzingis hit 6 threes or whatever it is. If Porzingis is even healthy enough to play this game, you know the overreaction.
This is gonna be the season overreacting because
but the Knicks did that. I keep saying this. I'm going to say
you're right. I
agree
with you though.
In the press release where they fired Tom Thibodeau, they said, we think this is a championship roster. So that means.
But I like that though. But I like it.
That means you guys, the fan base, you're going to be very uneasy this season because the emotional swings are going to be heavy because this is according to them, a championship or bust season. I think getting to the finals even would be acceptable. I'm not sure everyone in that building would agree, and I'm not saying they have to. But even betting-wise, they're like the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. They've been neck and neck with Cleveland for the duration of the offseason.
Here's the thing. So, I have no problem with the fact that the Knicks said that. I like setting standards. I like knowing what you're going for. I think there's nothing wrong with it. Now, does that put a little pressure on yourself? But yeah, I said this last week. Pressure is what you would have wanted. To all the Knicks fans here, tell me you didn't want this 5 years ago. You were dying for this day. You were dying for the days we'd be talking about, man, to my 2 cents said, they lose one game and you're mad. That's some privilege right there. That's some NBA privilege right there that we're talking about. You were mad about this. Now you're at the point you want this. Is it as fun as it was 2 seasons ago? No. Because
that was house money.
Yeah, because when you're playing with house money, it's a lot more fun. And I get it. But you also want to see your team have the expectations and then see if they can rise and get over it. The standard is fine. There's nothing wrong with setting the standard. And listen, the Knicks haven't had a good standard in, was it 2+ decades? They didn't really have much of it. Now they're having a standard, and it's like, I'm fine with that. Now, is there pressure with that? Yeah, but
yes.
At some point, if you're a championship team, you got to rise to the pressure. OKC had pressure this year. Cleveland had pressure this year. Boston,
yeah. Look at the markets you're naming other than Boston. It's different in New York.
Right?
It's different.
True.
It's different here because
but if you do
Boston got theirs in 2008.
But if you do it here, as we've seen other teams in other sports do it here, right, Brian? If you do it here, it's fine. I don't know, and I'm forgetting who said this. And
but it's different for this specific franchise.
Yeah,
because if you're a Yankee fan and you're
there's only one other franchise I think it could be worse for, and I would argue, and it's probably the Jets.
The Jets?
Yeah, because they're the Jets.
Yeah, but you know what? The Jets are one of two teams in their sport in this area. Like all due respect to the Nets.
Look at you throwing shade.
No,
look at you throwing shade.
Listen, the Nets are from Long Island and then New Jersey, and like they're still.
I get it.
They haven't been adopted. Like they just haven't, and they tried to. But we even joked like, "Yo, if they won a title, even with Kevin Durant, like like are people?
It doesn't hit the
parade
same. It doesn't
like
mean
it's
the same.
It's
right.
not there yet. The culture's not there yet, and it looks like it's going to be a while. But for the Knicks, like this is the team. For this sport, we're a basketball town and a baseball town. Football too, but you get what I'm saying. Like, this is what this city does. And this is the team where a lot of people who moved to this city in the 60s and 70s and even before that, like, this is their squad. People in my family and your family and people watching in this chat, like, they moved to this city as immigrants, and we're like, yo, the Knicks are our squad.
Knicks
Walt Frazier's my guy, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
Like this is the team, and they haven't won a title in over 50 years. So like this is why people feel angst and pressure and all these different things, because they know how important this is. They know how much it means, and they know that they've gotten close on multiple occasions. And now, specifically with this CBA and in this era, you know that these windows are tight.
Are very
like,
tight.
The window might be this year. It might have to be right now.
It might be
legitimately, because look at Boston. Boston thought they were going to be on a run, and now look. Same thing with Denver. They had to reset. They might be back this year. We'll see. But they also have Nikola Jokic, who could erase a lot of different things.
Which helps a lot. And look, you don't know how long these windows are. You're 100% right. But at the end of the day, you would like this a lot. You dream for days like this. You dream for days like this. Well, we could talk about, oh man, the window might be a year. That is privilege, folks. And you dreamed for days like this. You do not want the alternative. You've been there. You know what that is. And now we could talk about who they should sign with the final vet. Should they sign Ben Simmons? We actually talked about Ben Simmons. Anyway, getting back to that.
We got a couple people
brought up in the comments that I thought was interesting. Some people brought up Marcus Smart. Now, for people who do not know Bryan Fonseca here, Bryan Fonseca is a Marcus Smart guy.
Less so than before.
Yes.
Because he might be not capital W washed, but he might be lowercase washed right now.
And friends of both of us and the show, our guy Greg Film Stuff, says Marcus Smart will be perfect. What do you say? You're saying low-key washed. What are we saying in the chat? Because I saw some of you guys agree with Greg and say you like Marcus Smart here. He doesn't really fit that ball handler that you want, that Steph was talking about.
Kind of. You just don't want him to handle the ball that much. The thing with Marcus Smart is like, there's a couple issues. One, he played 34 games last year and 20 the year before. So health, but on a veteran minimum for someone who's going to be the 9th, 10th man, maybe. Like, he can play next to Jordan Clarkson, but the problem is you also have Deuce. And like it can complicate things, because then you're small, like in terms of your guard rotation off the bench. I might try to look for a ball handler who's a little bit bigger, not Ben Simmons. But look at, like, they don't have a lot to play with. I thought Gershon Yabusele was a home run. We talked about Yabusele weeks ago. And I was
we were on that weeks ago. We love that.
I posted a clip about it. Like, I thought Yabusele was perfect. I thought Jordan Clarkson was perfect. I thought they could have traded for Jordan Clarkson in February, and they decided to wait. And I'm like, someone, I'm forgetting who, compared him to J.R. Smith, to which I was like, that's an interesting comparison. What I would tell you is different from that is this. The 54-win Knicks from over 10 years ago, J.R. Smith was their second best scorer.
Yes.
Jordan Clarkson walks in the door as your 5th option, 4th option. he's going to be
the
your sixth man,
the
but
talent
like,
difference between those two teams.
yeah, like you still have Brunson, Towns, Bridges. I would say Clarkson, like per 36, he'll probably shoot more than OG Anunoby, but like you get the point.
Yeah.
And with Marcus Smart, like I kind of think you need somebody a little bit bigger, but then you could look at me and be like, Bryan, that's what Pacome Dadier is for. And it's like, maybe that's the end. Maybe he's the guy that we should be talking more about. And some people would mention Kolek. I could be wrong. I don't know if Kolek is going to be like the for sure 9th, 10th. Like, I don't know if he's a shoo-in to be in the rotation. I feel better about Dadier, but I could be wrong.
So do
Kolek
I.
is a really good passer, but we'll see.
I think so do I. I think if they felt better about Kolek as a ball handler, and maybe he's got. I think we'll see. I'm sure I'll talk to Steph more about this weekend through Summer League, but I think they're going to want to see how he progresses defensively more than anything, Bryan. I think that's going to be the thing.
That's the big question.
I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying about Dadier at all. And I'm sorry, we just saw the comment there. Somebody said, I think it was Nick Yak said Smart hurts McBride and Kolek. I agree. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of guys taking away minutes from these young guys who can develop, because I think the key minutes you can get for whether it's Hakporti, Dadier, or Kolek this year, I do think what more minutes they get, all of those guys played less than 300 minutes last year. I do think that's important, right? Like if you can get those guys significant rotation minutes through the year. We know Mike Brown is going to want to play 9 to 10 deep. This is an emphasis of the front office. We've talked about this multiple times with Bondi through this search from the time they fired Tibbs to now. So we know that, but I think you want to see those guys play. Maybe it's Dadier. He's a guy with size to me off the bench that if he can defend, shoot, a little bit of handling is huge for this team, and also just has some young legs. I mean, for me, man, like he's the guy I really want to see, and he's the guy. See, my 2 cents said I need to see Dadier show out at Summer League. I'm kind of with you. Now, that's the thing you like to see.
Yeah.
From second-year guys, whether they played or not. Because now Dadier didn't really kill that much in the G League as you'd like him to shoot. Didn't shoot the ball that great, but you wonder what he's been working on his game since then. They kind of have him on the Deuce McBride program that he was on a couple years ago. But Dadier, I think, really needs to show out. Kolek, too. I thought Kolek played very well in Summer League last year. I was very impressed when I saw him. Him and Hakporti, I were very impressed with last year when I was out there in Vegas, and I got to watch them a couple of games in person. I thought Kolek's command of the offense was good. His passing in the pick and roll with Hakporti was good. We know what Kolek can do as passer. He's an elite passer. Yes, I'm saying that. He's an elite passer. What doesn't get him on the floor are 2 things, is defense and then also consistent with the shooting. So what I'm looking for with him in Summer League is, can he be more aggressive with his shot? Can he look to shoot in ways that we know he won't in regular games? But yeah, man, I think that's it. Shout out to the homie, Chantel Shan, who's up in here. Chantel, shout out to you, our friend north of the border. Chantel said DeAnthony Melton could be a solid addition. Brogdon is solid, but he's made of glass and is always injured. That is my concern with Brogdon. I'm with you. I'm with you, Sister Chantel. That is my concern with Brogdon. Now, DeAnthony Melton, he's getting a lot of interest from different places, can shoot the ball, is coming off an injury. So it's like, I don't know. Let us know in the chat. What do you like, Bryan? Yeah, I like the DeAnthony Melton mention here. But what do you like between him and Brogdon?
No, I mean, ironically, because Melton is coming off the injury, but I like him more than Brogdon at this stage because Brogdon came into the league with famously bad medicals. Like he came into the league with one of the worst like medicals, according to some people who were in on that stuff that they've seen. And like right now, I don't know what you can expect out of him. Melton, like he makes sense from a role playing standpoint, but we were just talking about the rotation. And I think if you're looking at this, right, like how much do you need this other addition to play? I think in a perfect world, because if you want Mike Brown, like one of the things we talked about primarily was development. And if I'm looking at it, if I'm expecting the starting 5 to be, do we think Josh Hart is in the starting 5 to start the season?
Well, look, that's going to be one of the things we talk about a lot as we get closer to the season. I'm going to give you the kind of Steph answer on this. It's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Now, if
Chat, do y'all want to see Josh Hart in the starting 5 this year?
And listen, here's what I'll say. a lot of data showed in certain samples, it wasn't a large sample size, it wasn't super small either, that the Knicks were better on the court with the rest of the starting five minus Josh Hart and Deuce McBride in there. A lot of data shows that. The problem, as Bryan mentioned earlier, even with adding a Marcus Smart to the team, is that if you start Deuce McBride in the backcourt with Jalen Brunson, you now are very small. Though Deuce is a great defender, you are smaller. Do you want to do that? Now, it should, in theory, and we saw this in the small sample size, should make you better offensively, right? I don't know. So I here's what, if you want to, but you want to know what I think when I think about all this, is I'm just thinking it through. I actually don't think Josh Hart's going to be in the starting lineup next year. I think it's going to be either Mitch goes in the starting lineup or Deuce is in the starting lineup.
If it's Mitch,
I think it's more likely Mitch though.
Okay, if it's Mitch, then they need to know that Hawk Purdy can be the backup center. Like, I know you're going to stagger the two bigs anyway, and you're going to have Yabusele there, but that means Hawk Purdy kind of has to be in the rotation. Otherwise, you're going to be too small. So, and this is where some people would be like, well, if Tibbs played him more, then we would know.
I mean, nothing you can do about that now, though, right?
You know, he got some minutes comparatively, but like, yeah, he could have probably played more. But like, that's sort of the thing. And if we think Mike Brown goes in that direction and Josh Hart comes off the bench, then that means Deuce would not start, most likely. So
I think, I don't mean to cut you off, sorry, but I think that Josh Hart is going to be better with the bench unit for this team. And I've always said this about Josh Hart, who I love to watch. And I know you, he's a Bryan Fonseca all-star. We know this.
Love him.
I think that Josh Hart is better as a 25 to 28 minute per game player in his effectiveness for the team and coming off the bench.
Yes.
I don't really have a super preference over going with Mitch Deuce in the starting lineup. If you want to go with size, I think it's going to be Mitch. I think they're going to go with the double bigs.
Interesting.
I think you're going to see that. But you know how I feel about this, Bryan. People get way too caught up in who starts.
But here's the thing,
who's closing.
Here's the thing.
That's what and what versatility do you have with your closing lineups? That's what I care about.
And your closing lineups matter infinitely more than starting lineups. But if you're somebody who wants Mike Brown to play with pace, that is easier to do without the double big lineup to start.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Agreed. And I think some of what you should think about, JJ says Josh Hart should be playing more than 20 minutes. Listen, let me just say this real quick before I get back to my point. I understand that Josh Hart did not have a good Eastern Conference Finals. I understand. But some of y'all went too hard on him. Like, he's not a good player. He was rough. He was rough. He wasn't good defensively. He was not good offensively. It was not a good ECF for him. Could we not forget what this man did the first two rounds of the playoffs? Let's not act like he was the best player in the Detroit series.
You know what he is? He's a running back that you give like 50% of the carries to. You want him in a committee. You don't want him to have the bulk of the work.
I like this.
Because then the end of the season, they'll break down. Like, you don't want him to be like your lead running back. He plays like a running back, which is why I'm making the analogy. But like, you don't want Josh Hart to be your lead running back. You want him to be in there with the committee, maybe some goal line touches, 10, 12, carries a game, 15 if he's hot. That kind of thing. Like, Josh Hart as your seventh man, assuming Jordan Clarkson's sixth, whatever. Like those are your first two like wings off the bench, or I guess Jordan Clarkson would be like a ball handler. Like that's what you sort of would be looking at.
And I think JJ is he's expounded on his point. He said he's fine, but he gets exposed more on both ends of the floor the more he plays. I would agree, particularly on the offensive end. I don't disagree with your point. JJ, I understand your point.
That's probably fair.
I don't disagree. I think 20 minutes was a little bit harsh on him, but I don't disagree with your point, right? Like, and I think it ties into what Bryan says. Like, I get what you're saying. What I was talking about before was with what you want to go and switch and with size and all that. And you brought up the fact of how you want to play faster with pace. And this is where Mitch probably does not help you in that regard if you start him. I agree with that. I think also the good point for you that you're looking at, Bryan, is when you look at what Mike Brown did in Sacramento, particularly in how he tried to play with pace, one of the guards that he used, and I also watched this guard play in Summer League last year and do what he should do in a second-year player, was Keon Ellis, who you used for defensive sparks, was a little bit, was a little bit bigger of a guard than Deuce. But I wonder if Deuce could play in his role. He sees Deuce more in that Keon Ellis role for this team, and why he'd want to insert him in the starting lineup, because he did insert Keon Ellis into the starting lineup for JJ. I like your sense. JJ, I like your sense of humor. JJ's like, all right, 20 and a half minutes.
Also,
right.
a genius.
JJ put a little over under in here. I like that.
I wrote down the Knicks rotation that I think I would probably like to see. But before
the
that,
Knicks rotation you would like to see next year, or you think that Mike Brown is going to play next year?
If we're expecting double bigs, I think this is what it would look like. But
okay, if he plays double bigs, gotcha.
Genius says, why is nobody talking about Chris Paul? Dex, Chris Paul is one of your favorite players ever.
Of all time.
And you know I like Chris Paul as well. And this is supposed to be his final year, apparently. He told Jamel Hill that this is probably it. Are you interested at all? I don't think a lot of Knicks fans would be, so we won't have to spend too much time on this. But are you interested at all, professional broadcaster, in Chris Paul being on the team this year?
Okay. I'm gonna try to think this through, because
it's complicated, y'all.
It shouldn't be. Chris Paul is, as Bryan said, Chris Paul is one of my favorite players, favorite point guards of all time. Here's what. Can I start with? Okay. Chris Paul's a ball handler. Can he still give you 15 minutes and be solid? You're a little bit small with him. He's going to hurt you a little bit on the defensive end. And this is where I'd start to get worried. The Knicks are just adding too many small guards here, which is what worries me. Although Chris Paul is a professional, here's what Chris Paul doesn't help you with. He is not going to help you with pace at all whatsoever. He is not going to help you with pace. This is not what you want in terms of that. What he is a professional ball handler. He can run the team. He can run the offense. It is going to be fine. And he's going to have a high standard in terms of being like another coach on the floor. That's what I love about Chris Paul. But I don't think he helps necessarily in terms of how the Knicks want to play. Like, if they signed him, would I be mad about it? No. He's Chris Paul. And he can still play. And he had a very good season. He played all 82 games last year for the Spurs, which is highly impressive at his age. Again, it's in theory, I like him as a backup point guard, but I think if you're trying to play with more space, and I think he'd be a great mentor for Kolek, that's some value I could see there too. But I think if you're trying to play with more pace, I'm going to say probably no, but I'm not going to be upset against this. Yeah, you had me work through this, man. Like, I am just working through this. I don't even know.
Can we put Anakin Flo's comment?
What did Anakin Flo say?
Not this one. Yeah. No, not this one. The one before that he had, where he about
hell to the no. I don't
think they need it.
Anakin Flo's other comment about how he'd be like Jason Kidd was on the Knicks 2013 roster. Maybe. I see the comp that you're making there. Except that's Chris. I thought Jason Kidd made more of a better transition to being off the ball with that team.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure that Chris Paul makes with this team. I'm not.
I don't think they need it because
I'm torn. I'm torn. Ask me at the end of the show. I'm a little torn on this. I'm not sure. Like, there's positives. I kind of lean no. Right now, I'm leaning no. Is what I would say.
We'll put up some more comments before we get out of here. Y'all are bringing it today. We appreciate it.
Shout out to the Knicks fans, because you guys are bringing in the conference. The Magician said, "Where's the press conference?" Sir, it happened already. That is well over an hour ago. But if you scroll back on this after this live stream is over, you can see the press conference because we had it here before we came on. So right. Magician, you can see it. This is the post presser reaction. But if you want to check it out, definitely scroll earlier in the stream and you'll be able to see it.
So we agree. Bryan. And to people asking about Ben Simmons and Marcus Smart, we did mention them earlier. Stephan Bondi ruled out Ben Simmons entirely. Like,
he did.
Just was a flat no. Marcus Smart, we didn't talk to Bondi about, but we'll see. They are weighing options in terms of who they're going to actually use to add on the veteran minimum. On the roster, we agree that if they're going double big to start, which we don't know if they are yet. Mike Brown sort of dodged this and said he wants to finalize his coaching staff first, which a head coach should do because you want to incorporate, you want to, like, hear out your staff and be like, all right, here's what should we do? Leave it to the floor. So in terms of the starting five, if it's double big, we're expecting it to be Brunson, McHale, OG, Karl Anthony Towns, Mr. Robinson. Yes? If it's a double big.
If it's a double big.
So then if you're doing a 10-man rotation, that has to be Clarkson, Deuce, Josh Hart. No particular order from 6 through 10, but like I'm going rather from position, even though basketball is more positionless now. We know that. Clarkson, Deuce, Josh Hart, Yabusele, Hawk Purdy have to be the others. Like it has to be Hawk Purdy. So then whoever this signee is, like, whose spot are they taking? Like I know that Bondi said it has to be a ball handler, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, are you sure you don't want it to be a center? Do you trust Hawk Purdy that much? I would, but I also don't know. You see what I'm getting at here? And if Mitch gets hurt, I guess you just move Josh Hart back into the starting lineup, or even Deuce, and you try to, move it in that direction. But I almost think that the person you sign on the veteran minimum, you don't want it to be someone you have to absolutely play that much.
But that person has to then be comfortable with that role of not playing that much for signing for that veteran minimum and understanding that they're going to get the chance. And maybe this comes up to our homie Chantel Shan, who has a comment here, says Mitch has dealt with injuries every year. If he starts, they have to be sure about Yabusele for one. I think that's another good point. They have to be sure about two. Along with Hawk Purdy, to your point, do you look for a big like Thomas Bryan, who Knicks fans are not happy after those three? What game was that? Was that game 4? Game 4 or 5? When he hit them threes?
It wasn't 6?
Oh, sorry, it was 6.
It was 6, yeah. I thought it was 6.
Yeah, I remember during the stream, I was just like, what? Sorry, we don't need to go back to that. Anyway,
we're getting a lot of
Thomas Bryan as a backup. Chris Boucher is another name we're seeing here a lot in the chat. A lot of people, Chris Boucher is a name that a lot of people brought up to us during the stream last year when we were going up on the trade deadline. A lot of y'all like Chris Boucher a little bit more than I do, personally.
Yeah, I know why you don't like him that much.
Why do you think I don't like him that much?
Because he can go from having 23 and 10 one game to having like nothing in the next 4 straight. Like
Maddeningly inconsistent.
Yes.
Maddeningly inconsistent. So that's it. I think Chantel's point about being concerned about Mitch's health, and then your point about the trust off the bench and who you sign, I do think that's a good one. But a lot of this you'll be told about what's their confidence level in Hawk Purdy. This is why whoever this signing is, one, I think this is coming after Summer League, although you never know. Campaign was signed in Summer League. In fact, when Campaign was signed in Summer League last year, I literally remember this. I was walking through the Thomas and Mack Center, and I walked past Bondi was just there, posted up, chilling, watching the game. It wasn't a Knicks game. And I was like, yo, what do you think of Campaign signing? He was like, they signed Campaign. He didn't even know. He's like, they signed Campaign. So this signing could come random as hell. It's like 3 in the afternoon, Pacific time. Signing could come random as hell. Who knows?
Were you happy about that signing, by the way?
At the time, I was.
Okay.
Shout out to my fellow Steelers fan Campaign.
Shout
out to myself, fellow Steelers fan Campaign. Somebody said, DK said, I'd rather bring back Precious than sign Boucher. Can't say I disagree.
Although if I'm Precious, I want to play. If I'm Precious, I want to play.
But Precious is going to want to play, and that's why and that's the thing. You got to be a vet, and this is where it goes into what Chantel was saying. Thomas Bryan kind of knows where his role is. Joe Edwards, shout out to you, brings up a name. I thought we looked at this guy when we talked about possible free agent signings with the TMLE, and I don't believe he's been signed yet. Amir Coffey. I do not believe Amir Coffey has been signed yet.
Still a free agent?
I think he still is. I believe so. We can double check on that. Our producer Jeff, if you can double check on that, we will.
I think that's right. Someone else says they have James Najee, who we did talk about. Another project. You know what I mean? I think with Thomas Bryant also.
JJ.
With Thomas Bryant also.
The only Boucher I want is Bobby.
Boucher. With Thomas Bryant also, amazing locker room guy. And when he was on the Nuggets, there were times he would play, there were times that he didn't. When he was on the Heat, same thing. Although he played often and then he didn't play, and then he's a guy you can toggle in and out of the lineup, and his mood will be fine. You watch him in games, He is up. He's encouraging everybody the entire time. He used to talk, he would motivate like Jokic. He would do this with Bam. He would do this with whoever was on the Pacers at the time. Like, he's actually he would be a great locker room guy, Thomas Bryant.
No, I can see that. NYC B-Ball always says Malcolm Brogdon. We did talk about Malcolm Brogdon, NYC B-Ball 08. He's being considered. Bondi said that he is a name to be considered for that spot. We got a couple more minutes to go before we have to wrap, because I have to get out of here. So does Bryan. Look, let's close on this. And I had somebody, I'm not going to say who, in the media text me, and their reaction to the Mike Brown press conferences, and I just want to make sure I say this right in what they said. They said, "What a bore."
Really?
And this person was there, is what I'll say.
Oh.
And look.
Not Bondi.
It was not Bondi.
Yeah,
It was not Bondi.
Just in case people
it was not Bondi.
open their third eye. And
it was not Bondi. And so I said, let's put the spelling rumors. It absolutely was not Bondi. As I said at the top, these introductory press conferences are never, you're not excited unless somebody comes in and, like Bondi said, bangs the table. I'm gonna win. We're gonna win we're gonna win 6 championships. You knew you wasn't getting there with Mike Brown. I think Mike Brown, I'll repeat what I've said. Bryan and I are sort of on the same page. I think it's a fine hire. I think he gave you what you thought in the press conference. I don't think he was going to give you a lot to work with. I do think a lot of people you talk to in other media markets, Sacramento, other places, I think he'll be fine and great with the media as he moves forward and is comfortable. I think he's going to demand excellence of these players. I think he understands what the time is. I'm with my 2 cents on this, who just commented right here. I could care less if he's a bore. It's chip or bust. Let's get the chip. That's got to be the energy, right? That's got to be the energy. It is what it is. The game is what it is. It is championship or bust time for the Knicks. I think Mike Brown knows what's ahead of him. I think it's fine. I don't think if you're not excited about this, well, hopefully you can get excited about winning. End game is right here too. We should prove it on the court, not about the press conference. Also with you. It's about what happens on the court. It's a big season upcoming for the Knicks. We're going to have you plugged in here on New York Got Game with the New York Post. We'll have a lot of more shows. We'll be talking Summer League this weekend, more stuff on the Liberty, the Knicks, so stay plugged in with us. If something happens, they sign Ben Simmons, we're going to give you a live show as well too. We will have that. He is Bryan Fonseca. I'm Dexter Henry. We appreciate all of you guys in the chat for checking in. Shout out, we should give some love to our producers, Ryan Sampson and Jeff Stansbury, for doing their thing on this one. We'll catch you next time on the next New York Got Game live show. Peace, y'all.